Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu is set to make a speech to US Congress amid continued ceasefire talks.
The French Alps has been named the 2030 Winter Games host by the International Olympic Committee.
Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu is set to make a speech to the United States Congress as US officials say a phased ceasefire deal with Hamas is within reach. Netanyahu will also meet with President Joe Biden and Vice President Kamala Harris, while officials from Egypt, Israel, the United States and Qatar meet in Doha to finalize the details of the proposal. Netanyahu's visit to the United States sparked protests in the US Capitol, with some condemning Israel and calling on Biden to end arms sales, while others expressed support for the Israeli Prime Minister but urged him to strike a deal which would see the release of the remaining hostages in Gaza. It comes as Gaza's health ministry says the bodies of 55 people killed by Israeli strikes have been brought to local hospitals over the past 24 hours. Meanwhile, Palestinians ordered to leave parts of Khan Yunis by the Israeli military say they are sleeping on the streets.
"18 people have been killed after a plane crashed during takeoff in Nepal. The only survivor was the pilot, who has been taken to hospital with injuries to his eyes. A local doctor said he is not in a critical condition. The Soria Airlines plane was heading from Tribhuvan International Airport in Kathmandu, which is the main airport in Nepal for international and domestic flights, to the resort town of Pokhara. But it slipped off the runway during takeoff and caught fire. It's unclear how the plane slipped.
Good to see you.
Good morning.
I know, thank you so much for coming.
Vladimir Zelensky has thanked the Vatican for its participation in the recent peace summit in Switzerland.
I think it's...
Your collaborators here.
The Ukrainian president met with the Secretary of State of the Holy See, Cardinal Pietro Parolin, in Kiev, where Parolin said he shared the Pope's stance towards Ukraine. In Kherson, a 50-year-old man was hospitalized after the Russian military dropped explosives from a drone on the region. 15 settlements on the right bank of the Kherson region were attacked, with 30 private houses, a commercial establishment, a gas pipeline and cars damaged. Despite this, Zelensky said that his country's missile program is, quote, showing good dynamics and gradually approaching the possibility of using their own missiles. Meanwhile, Moscow says it is carrying out military exercises using Yars intercontinental ballistic missile launchers capable of carrying a nuclear payload. The exercises are the second of its kind to take place this month.
Yes.
French President Emmanuel Macron says he will keep a centrist caretaker government on through the Olympics to avoid disorder, brushing aside an 11th-hour nomination for Prime Minister by the new Popular Front. It comes after the leftist coalition, who won the most votes in this month's parliamentary elections, selected little-known civil servant Lucie Castex as their choice for Prime Minister.
Ma volonté, c'est dès qu'on le pourra, de pouvoir constituer en effet un gouvernement, parce que le pays a besoin d'un gouvernement pour prendre les décisions, préparer un budget, prendre les décisions pour le pays. Et donc, de manière évidente, jusqu'à la mi-août, on doit être concentré sur les Jeux. Et puis à partir de là, en fonction de l'avancée de ces discussions, ce sera ma responsabilité de nommer un Premier ministre ou une Première ministre et de lui confier la tâche de constituer un gouvernement et d'avoir le rassemblement le plus large qui lui permette d'agir et d'avoir la stabilité.
The Olympics get underway with an opening ceremony in Paris on Friday.
With around 4 months to go before the US elects a new president for 4 years, the German government has already been preparing for the prospect of a second Donald Trump government. But how could Trump's return to the White House affect Europe's biggest economy and the EU? Philip Madonick from the German Council on Foreign Relations warns that security policy, economic policy and foreign policy are set to change.
Für Deutschland, für Europa gibt es, glaube ich, ganz klar die Schwierigkeit, wie würde man damit umgehen, wenn Trump im Bereich Handel tatsächlich seine Ankündigungen oder seine Beschreibung davon, wie er mit Tarifen, mit Zöllen im Handel umgehen würde, wahrmachen würde. Zum anderen wird weiterhin die China-Politik der USA ganz klar das transatlantische Verhältnis auch mit beeinflussen. Und Trump hat schon in der ersten Amtszeit, aber auch jetzt wieder gezeigt, dass Sicherheitspolitik nicht mehr selbstverständlich ist, wie es das war für Europa, aber auch für Deutschland als ganz engen Verbündeten der USA.
Regional Director of the German Marshall Fund, Sutta David Wilk, says Germany and the EU are preparing for the scenario that the US would decrease its presence in Europe and instead turn its attention to the Indo-Pacific.
Most people in Berlin reckon that Ukraine is going to be the responsibility for Europe moving forward when it comes to both defense and reconstruction. Obviously, it's important that the United States still plays a role, but most Europeans are betting that either administration is going to expect Europe to take the lead on Ukraine.
Whilst the German government has been preparing well behind the scene for a potential second Trump term, his unpredictability is still of concern. Trump is known for making quick, rash decisions and deals his way that could potentially change the course of history, not just for Ukraine and China, but also the Middle East. Liv Stroud in Berlin for Euronews.
Financial police in Italy have seized €121 million worth of stock from a Milan-based Amazon unit over allegations of tax fraud and worker exploitation. It relates to the use of so-called labour reservoirs, a system where large companies illegally subcontract logistics services to other firms to cut labour costs and pay less tax. Similar probes have previously been launched by Milan prosecutors against prominent delivery and logistics companies, including DHL and UPS.
So far this year, the authorities have killed 30 problem bears, and they've allowed hunters to shoot another 11. And after a few bear attacks last year, the far-right Environment Minister says he's going to allow hunters to shoot even more. But ecologists are in uproar. They say not enough is being done to stop bears wandering into towns and villages, such as making rubbish bins bear-proof. And the World Wildlife Fund says the best approach is to ensure bears are not attracted to human settlements in the first place. As the summer heat makes the outdoors often unbearable for tourists and locals alike in Rome, the city's most famous building can be visited in the cooler night hours. And if the full moon is out, it makes for an unforgettable experience. The Colosseum, which is also the world's largest amphitheatre, was built during the rule of Emperor Titus Flavius Vespasian between 70 AD and 80 AD. Visitors can go to the basements where the animals were held in cages and the slaves and gladiators waited before being lifted up to the arena by surprise, using a complex system of winches to fight for the gory delight of the bloodthirsty crowd.
Siamo proprio esattamente sul piano dell'arena, anzi ci dobbiamo immaginare che questa superficie di legno si estendeva su tutto quanto l'ovale del Colosseo e qui si svolgevano gli spettacoli che il popolo poteva vedere dalla mattina alla sera.
And originally the Colosseum had a gigantic 30-metre bronze statue of the Emperor Nero outside it. The UN's cultural agency UNESCO has led a celebration of Mostar's historic bridge that was rebuilt 20 years ago after being destroyed in the Bosnian War. In a speech, Jin Q, the deputy head of the agency, said that by restoring monuments we can rebuild the possibility of peace. Built in the 16th century by Suleiman the Magnificent, the bridge had symbolically and physically connected Muslims, who mostly lived in the east, with Christians, who mostly lived in the west.
The French Alps was named as the 2030 Winter Games host by the International Olympic Committee (IOC) on Wednesday, though with conditions attached. French President Emmanuel Macron helped present the bid to IOC members. He gave assurances that the national government, being formed in office after the 2024 Summer Games in Paris, will underwrite all the organizational guarantees that must be signed.
In front of you today, I want to confirm my full commitment and the full commitment of the French nation. And I assure you that I will ask the next Prime Minister to include not only this guarantee, but also an Olympic law in the priorities of the new government.
IOC members accepted his guarantees and voted their approval. The French bid is a project centered on ski resorts in the French Alps and ice sports venues in the coastal city of Nice.
There are no concrete threats to the upcoming Olympic Games in Paris. That's according to France's Interior Minister. Gérald Darmanin said around 1,000 people have been banned from attending the competition amid suspicion of potential spying. Others were flagged for suspected Islamic radicalization, left or right-wing political extremism, and significant criminal records. Over 1 million background checks have also been made to scrutinize Olympic volunteers, workers, and others involved in the Games.
Alors, nous n'avons pas de menaces caractérisées pour les Jeux Olympiques, ni les services de renseignement français, ni les services étrangers, amis, partenaires qui nous aident. Nous sommes aujourd'hui très attentifs évidemment à chaque signe faible, comme on dit dans le renseignement, mais nous n'avons pas de menaces caractérisées.
35,000 police officers will patrol Paris every day of the Games.